The community center in Dallas was a modest brick building, its gymnasium packed with over 300 people, local activists, small business owners, teachers, and families, all squeezed into folding chairs or standing along the walls. The air hummed with anticipation as Jasmine Crockett, the congresswoman known for her sharp intellect and fierce advocacy, stood at a wooden podium under harsh fluorescent lights. Her navy blazer was crisp, her expression focused as she spoke passionately about a new initiative to fund job training programs for underserved neighborhoods. Her voice carried a rhythm, rising and falling with conviction, each word landing with the weight of someone who'd fought for every inch of her platform. The crowd was with her, nodding, some whispering, "That's right," or scribbling notes. A few phones were out, live streaming her speech to X, where her followers were already amplifying her message. Then, from the back of the room, a voice sliced through the air like a blade. "Go back to Africa." The words hung there, ugly and raw. The room went silent, as if the air had been sucked out. Heads turned toward the source, a middle-aged man in a red cap, his face flushed with defiance. Murmurs of shock rippled through the crowd. An older woman gasped, clutching her purse. A young man nearby stood, fists clenched, ready to confront the heckler. Security guards, stationed near the exits, started moving toward the man, their radios crackling. Crockett froze mid-sentence, her hands gripping the podium's edges. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, found the heckler across the sea of faces. The moment stretched, heavy with expectation. The crowd waited, some holding their breath, others whispering prayers. Crockett raised a hand, a subtle but firm gesture to halt the guards. She adjusted the microphone, her face unreadable, and the silence deepened. Everyone knew something was coming, but no one could predict what. The confrontation. Crockett leaned into the microphone, her posture radiating control. "Sir," she began, her voice low but piercing, each syllable deliberate. "Let me make one thing clear, I'm not going anywhere." The crowd stirred, a few clapping before she continued. "My ancestors built this country. They laid the bricks, they tilled the fields, they bled for it. Their sweat is in the foundation of this nation, and that makes me more American than your hate could ever comprehend." The room erupted, applause thundering as people leapt to their feet. The heckler, visibly rattled, opened his mouth to shout again, but Crockett wasn't done. "You want to talk about going back," she said, her voice rising now, sharp as a whip. "Let's go back to when hate like yours was called out for what it is, cowardice masquerading as courage. Let's go back to when people like me stood up, spoke truth, and changed the world despite people like you." The heckler tried to interrupt, his voice drowned by the crowd's roar. Security reached him, but Crockett waved them off again, refusing to let him be escorted out just yet. "No, let him stay," she said, her eyes locked on his. "Let him hear this, I'm here for every person in this room, every person in this country, who believes in justice. That includes you, if you'd ever choose to listen." The crowd's cheers grew deafening, a tidal wave of support. Phones captured every second, and within minutes, clips of her response were racing across X, shared with captions like, "Jasmine Crockett just ended him," and "This is how you handle hate." The heckler, now shrinking under the weight of the room's energy, was finally let out, his red cap pulled low. Crockett took a sip of water, her composure unshaken, and resumed her speech as if nothing had happened, but the moment had already taken on a life of its own. The viral storm. By the next morning, Jasmine Crockett was a national phenomenon. The video of her response had exploded, racking up millions of views on X, YouTube, and every major news outlet. Morning shows replayed the clip, pundits praising her poise and eloquence. She didn't just shut him down, one CNN analyst said, she reframed the entire conversation. Late-night hosts turned her words into punchlines, with one joking, "Jasmine Crockett just gave a history lesson so good, I need to retake high school." Hashtags like #CrockettClapsBack and #StayHere trended globally, with thousands of posts celebrating her as a beacon of strength. Memes of her steely gaze flooded the internet, captioned with phrases like, "When you try to come for Jasmine but she sends you to school." But not everyone was cheering. Some ex-users, particularly from far-right corners, called her response divisive or race-baiting. One viral post, retweeted thousands of times, read, "Crockett's just playing the victim to push her agenda." Others dug into her voting record, trying to paint her as a radical. Crockett, undeterred, went live on X that evening from her office, her voice steady as ever. "This isn't about division," she said, looking directly into the camera. "This is about truth. My roots are here, in Texas, in America. I'm fighting for a future where everyone, black, white, Latino, Asian, everyone, has a seat at the table. If that scares you, that's your problem, not mine." Her words resonated, pulling in even some skeptics. Polls showed her approval rating spiking, especially among young voters. The heckler, identified as a local with ties to fringe groups, became a footnote, his X account suspended after a flood of reports. Crockett's response wasn't just a moment, it was a movement. The lasting impact months later, the ripple effects of that day in Dallas were undeniable. Crockett's words had sparked a nationwide conversation about identity, history, and resilience. Community centers from Chicago to Atlanta invited her to speak, each event packed with people eager to hear her vision. She didn't just talk about the incident, she used it to push for policy, more funding for education, protections against hate speech, and economic programs for marginalized communities. Her speeches wove together history and hope, urging audiences to not just clap back, but build forward. Young activists, inspired by her, launched voter registration drives and anti-racism workshops, citing her as their spark. The heckler faded into obscurity, his name barely mentioned except as a cautionary tale. Investigations revealed his connections to extremist groups, further discrediting him. Meanwhile, Crockett's influence grew. She keynoted a national conference in Washington, D.C., where she stood before a diverse crowd of thousands. "One voice can shake a room," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. "But together, we can shake a nation." The standing ovation lasted minutes. Across America, her call to action took root, new coalitions formed, policies shifted, and a generation of leaders emerged, all tracing their fire back to that day when Jasmine Crockett turned an insult into a revolution. Her response hadn't just shocked America, it had changed it.